impact do edibles have on driving, and how long do these effects last? So we see that a lot more people are using edibles kind of more than ever before. And there's a variety of reasons for this. So first, people will use them because potentially they are eliminating those negative effects of things like smoking. They might use them because they just kind of want a longer high. Like edibles are typically lasting with peak effects at like 2 hours, lasting for like around 6 hours. And some people really enjoy that kind of longer lasting high versus that immediate kind of instantaneous feeling. Now, the problem is that when people are partaking in a variety of drugs, they still have to perform their day-to-day activities, including things like driving. And so there's been a lot of discussion about what is going on with weed and driving. Now, weed and driving has been kind of studied a little bit more than I thought, but specifically edibles with driving, that's a relatively new subject. And people are looking at this because of those long-lasting effects of edibles. So like people are potentially taking them and then let's say 3 hours later an emergency appears and they have to go out driving. Are they safe to actually go out at that point? And so that's what the recent research is looking into. Like how long do these effects last and what are the actual effects? So in terms of what you expect, the expectations are kind of true. So if I asked you what people on weed were like when they're driving, you probably say things like, oh, they drove more slowly and they stayed further away from other people. You might also say something about like their slower reaction time. Now, we do see those first two things. We do see that in the case of edibles, that people will drive more slowly and they will follow kind of further behind than if they had not been on weed. Now, the reaction time side of things is actually a little bit more up for debate than the other two. Like, we for sure know that people who are high while they are driving drive more slowly. And we see this in pretty much every case. So there's a study looking at people who were daily smokers versus like recreational every once in a while smokers versus people who had never really used. And what they found was that, if they had been everyday smokers, they in general just drove more slowly compared to the other groups. And there are suggestions that the people in that like recreational group were more impaired by weed. So when you gave them weed, they actually showed kind of like greater errors in response to things, suggesting that like maybe the people who were everyday smokers had developed more of a tolerance to it, so it didn't see as many effects. And there's another study that specifically just looked at THC oil. And what they found was basically identical. So they found that people drove more slowly. And what they found is that they kind of stayed away from other people more. I'd be curious if anybody was looking at the dependent variable of waiting at a stop sign, waiting for it to turn green, because that is a story that I've heard far too many times from stoners. But in terms of driving more slowly, that's pretty consistent. And not only that, they actually did not find that they were worse off in terms of like risky driving scenarios. So they put them into like kind of hazardous risk scenarios and they found that they were still relatively good at actually dealing with those kind of like emergency driving situations. Now, however, they said that they were worse at driving in general. So when you asked them about how good their driving was, they said that they were quite terrible at it. But they didn't actually seem to be. Now, my personal favorite study was this Canadian study where they're basically like, okay, here are the rules in Canada for their weed. We can only have up to like 10 mgs of THC in like an edible dose. And so we're going to have people purchase their own edibles and we're going to do this specific amount on driving. So what does 10 mgs of weed do for driving? I'm not entirely sure why Canada still has people buy their own weed. In the United States, it's been like that because we can't legally purchase weed for research use because it's been a Schedule I drug, and still kind of up for debate about what's going to happen in terms of now that it's like supposedly Schedule III for medical. Like, what does that mean for us researchers? But anyways, in Canada, they just had them go out and buy their own weed, which is 10 mgs maximum, which is wild to me as somebody from Michigan, where our daily dose in terms of edibles that is allowed to buy, or a single purchase dose, I guess, is 200 milligrams. So Michigan is a little bit ridiculous with our weed allowances. So this Canadian study had them come in with their own little purchased edibles, legally purchased with 10 milligrams, that's highest dose, although some people did choose a lower dose of 5 milligrams, and had them come in and basically like do a baseline driving simulator test. Like, how do you feel in this? Is this making you nauseated? If so, then you're out of the study. But if not, we'll continue on. And then one day they were to take the edible, and then one day they were supposed to take the non-edibles. So basically you're looking to see, does this edible do something specific in the driving simulator, and how long does this effect last? So they tested them pretty much like every 2 hours. So they're like, hey, come in, we're going to like test how much THC is in your system. You're going to take this like drug or maybe not drug, and then you're just going to go and play this simulator. Now, the simulator was interesting in a variety of ways. So first they just kind of had them going on a country road, and then they'd they'd have somebody annoying, like a daily frustration appear. So like random slow car appears. And then like, what are you going to do when the slow car appears? Are you going to race around it? Do you have like the dotted yellow line? Are you allowed to do that? Like they had to deal with those kind of normal driving conditions. And then they also like gave them an opportunity to race. And they're like, what is going to happen in the group that had weed? And what they found was, yeah, unsurprising, they just drove more slowly and they also followed further away. And that's pretty much it. Now, they also said that they did not feel comfortable driving. So they're basically like, yeah, we are high for like 7 hours. So at hours 2, 4, and 6, they're like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable driving. I'm not going to drive. And they found that that slower driving, that was seen at 2 hours, but not 4 or 6 hours. Yeah, what you see in terms of edibles versus like smoked or vaped, pretty comparable. People just tend to drive more slowly on weed. Maybe the reaction time is decreased. That seems to have more findings in support of that for like the smoked or vaped weed in comparison to the edible. So yeah, when people are high, they just kind of drive more slowly and stay away from others more, which is kind of the opposite of what you see on alcohol, which is fascinating there. Now, let me make this very clear. There are deficits due to weed intake. So driving more slowly and potentially having a decreased reaction time is very problematic for driving. So don't listen to your friend when they say like, oh yeah, my driving is just as good. Like people are aware that when you are driving impaired, you are driving impaired. Like in general, if you're questioning if you're okay to drive, you probably shouldn't. If you know you're going to imbibe someplace with whatever drug of your choice, make sure to figure out a plan on how to get home before you go there. Because while it's like tempting to be like, oh, haha, they just drive more slowly, like that can have real world implications on driving. And that can be life or death in some scenarios. Just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't happen. And it could be you that it happens to.